Vehicles are being driven longer than they ever have before. According to the Bureau of Transportation, we are at a record high of vehicles lasting up to 14.5 years on average across vehicles across the board in the United States. Cars are lasting longer than they ever have before. So we got to bear that in mind with thinking about the death of DIY, the complexity of new cars, the advanced diagnostic process, advanced electronics, and we also have to weigh that with the benefits of technology in cars. I mean, it's not for nothing that we have all this technology. It's not for nothing that new cars have a security gateway device, and we're going to get into that. That's part 4 if you're interested, and I'm going to link the chapters down below. Part 1, what is the difference between old vehicles and new vehicles? I mean, to accurately talk about, is modern day vehicles going to kill do-it-yourself repairs? We got to talk about why DIY was possible in the past and what's different now in comparison to then. The main difference is carburation versus direct injection. A direct injection vehicle is going to be controlled by your ECU, your electronic control unit, and that's going to be telling your injectors when to pulse, when to put fuel into your cylinders. But a carburetor is different than that. The carburetor works all mechanically. There's no electronic signals. It works on vacuums, springs, and levers, and it actually mixes the air and the fuel before it ever gets into the cylinder. So it's a different system, and there's a lot more adaptability inside of a carburetor for a mechanic to mess with it and adjust it. Whereas injectors, there's a lot less ability for a mechanic to adjust it, and it'd be more so in a tuner's hand if it's not stock aftermarket. And if it is stock and it's like OEM, then pretty much it's just going to be programmed to do whatever it has to do, and it's going to make those adjustments itself. But the mechanic really doesn't have any control over that because it's all computerized, it's all digitalized, and it's like the brain of the computer is doing that for you. So that's a massive difference in cars, and it's a massive difference in how you approach different problems. I mean, let's say a misfire, for instance. A misfire in the 1970s is a lot different than a misfire today. Or brakes in the 1970s were pretty much all drum brakes. And some mechanics nowadays hate drums because they don't have experience on them. They haven't learned the tricks of them, and those springs fly, you smash your fingers, and it sucks. But mostly nowadays you're going to find rotors, you're going to find rotors and pads versus you're going to find drums. Sometimes you'll find drums on rears of older trucks or like heavy duty trucks. And if you work in a heavy duty field, you'll see drums a lot. But there's a lot of difference in new cars versus old cars. AC, power steering, radios, communication devices, GPS, you have antenna, you have a full CAN bus line running generally under your seats or right on the kick panel that runs the length of your car, that communicates to your fuel pump in the back, that communicates to your injectors in the front, that communicates to your radio, that communicates to your airbag sensor, and it's all connected in one giant wiring harness. And it's a lot different than vehicles back in the day that were all mechanical, that were all vacuum controlled. The older HVAC systems on Fords was vacuum controlled. You had a bunch of different hoses that were running, and when you had vacuum pulled on this hose, the defroster would open up and you'd get heat there. When you had vacuum pulled on this hose and this hose at the same time, the defroster would close, the feet would open, or the feet and the face would open. Things were just a lot different, and honestly, they were repairable. Now it's replace a part instead of repair the issue. And that's where a lot of the disconnect comes, because stuff is expensive. You got to replace parts. You can't just bring it to the mechanic, have him look at it, and 20 minutes later you're on your way because he fixed it, he adjusted your carb, he tightened a spring, he lubed it up. That doesn't really exist anymore, and it's not realistic. So cars today are a lot different than cars even just 20 years ago. Part 2, and I touched on it a little bit already, but what are the benefits to innovation? I mean, there's got to be a reason that we're doing all this, that we're packing all this stuff into vehicles. And there is. I mean, in the last 20 years, we've added AC to vehicles, we've added power steering to vehicles, we've added brake assist to vehicles. And before all those things, if you've ever had your power steering go out when you're driving, you know how hard, or if you've driven older vehicles like muscle cars, you know how hard it can be to steer that wheel when, especially, you're going slow, or if your tires are lower, or anything out of the ordinary happens. Without that power steering, it can become very difficult. Same with your brakes. Your brakes are extremely hard to press without your brake assist from your vacuum brake booster, or if you got a truck, your power booster. Either way, the systems are both helping you press your brakes, because the power required to actually activate your brake pedals from the lever mechanism of your brake pedal, or to activate your brake pads from the lever mechanism of your brake pedal, is a lot of force. So with the assist, it becomes I mean, pretty easy. You can touch it with your toes and press it. So that's a huge innovation, super helpful. Another one is going to be radios. I mean, we've went from cassette tapes to CDs to Bluetooth, and I mean that all requires more modules. It requires more wiring. You got to add a Bluetooth receiver in there. You got to have your wire to your antenna still. You got to have the capability inside of your computers to read your phone, to understand your phone. And I mean, there's a lot there. You also have blind spot monitoring in new vehicles. You have airbags in new vehicles that didn't exist. You have ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance System, which is your blind spot monitoring, your lane keeping assist. Um, there's so much to that. I mean, that's like your Tesla Autopilot, your Chevy Super Cruise, that stuff. There's different levels of automation inside of vehicles, but it's all kind of branched under that one umbrella from E1 to E5. But beside the point, there's a lot of reasons for all this innovation. I mean, cars run more clean than they used to, emissions related. You have EVAP stuff that's supposed to make vehicles run better for the environment and to make them cleaner so that they're not killing our ozone layer. I say supposed to because while it does work, most mechanics know those systems fail all the time, and they're one of the biggest reasons that your car will end up in the shop is for an EVAP related issue. Anyway, well, not one of the biggest, but a huge reason your car will end up in the shop that it really didn't have to end up in the shop at all, because that's just an added system, like totally added just to make your vehicle run a little bit cleaner. It's it's not a high percentage of amount that it's actually running cleaner. But beside the point, that's not what this video is about. There's a lot of innovation that actually helps us, but with that innovation, we have to add stuff. I mean, you can't have all the benefits without adding things to the vehicle. And when you add things to the vehicle, you're losing space. And as vehicles are getting smaller and more compact, because we're trying to make everything fit and still have comfort, you run out of space. I mean, if you look up Cadillac Northstar engine in a V8, those things insane to work on. They're crazy. Mechanics know them by name because they suck. There's no room. There's too many modules. The whole engine bay is full. It sucks. There's nothing good about that engine. It sucks. I mean, they run good. I'll give it that. They do run okay. They run okay. Don't attack me in the comments. Part 3, the bad things about it. So the good things, we talked about that. You get a lot of added benefits. But the bad things for a mechanic or a DIYer is space. And then as we're adding this technology, it would be about 7 years ago now. It was 2015. But 2 hackers actually hacked into a Jeep Grand Cherokee that was driving on the expressway just to show that they could shut it down while it was driving on the expressway, had the wipers turned on, had a whole bunch of crazy stuff turned into it. They were sitting in a motel on their computers, had full control of that Jeep. Absolutely insane. Another example would be newer Hellcats or newer Jeep Hellcats, or the Challengers are being stolen from a computer and an OBD2 plug because they're hacking straight into it, popping it in, programming a new key, starting it up, and they're leaving. That's being kind of, I would say, patched out or like fixed by Chrysler and Stellantis, but that's still a huge issue. And because of that, they introduced secure gateway networks, and those secure gateway networks have made it even harder for your average DIY worker, your average independent mechanic shop to actually scan your vehicle, clear codes, or, well, they can scan it, they can read the codes, but a vehicle that's equipped with a secured gateway, if you don't have a pass-through device or you don't have the network communication to actually communicate with that gateway, then you can't clear codes, you can't do diagnostic tests, you can't do bidirectional scanning, you can't do even your parking brakes for the electronic parking brakes. You can do nothing. And that locks out some independent shops that don't want to spend the money every year. I think it's not that expensive. It's like $50 to $100 per year per software. So it does add up, especially if you're not working on a lot of vehicles after Chrysler's 2018, Ford's 2021, Mercedes is 2020. There's a bunch of them for the new vehicles. So if you're not working on them, you really don't want to spend the money. But then when you do get one, you're screwed and you can't work on it. So it is kind of killing DIY. It's kind of killing independent shops. But it is not to the point that it's not fixable. I mean, there's a lot of companies now that are making pass-through devices that will allow you to plug right in and get past the secured network. Those aren't necessarily recommended or approved by the manufacturers. The manufacturers have approved websites that you can pay for the subscription. When you pay for the subscription, it'll tie to your scanner. Then when you scan the vehicle, it'll communicate with the network. The network will tell you, okay, you're good to go in, and then that's how it works. And while that may sound poopy, I guess we'll say, and like an extra layer and just making it harder for your average Joe to work on cars, it really is necessary based on what I said before because of hackers, because of technology, because of all the dangers that present with having these computers inside your vehicles. So there's a lot of benefits, but there is also a lot of negatives and a lot of drawbacks to technology in vehicles. However, that being said, do I think it's killing DIY? And that's, the main part of this video. And I wanted to give my honest opinion, but I also wanted to give statistics and realistic examples of why I feel this way. So, DIY repair is an amazing thing because of what it is. It's the guys that work 9 to 5, the women that work 9 to 5 already and have a totally different trade and a skill set that are going to learn and are going to teach themselves. They're going to go online. They're going to go find the information that's available. They're going to comprehend it, and they're actually going to, take the time to do it themselves. And I think DIY is beautiful because of that, because you have so much skill on particular subjects that's not even inside of an industry. It really is cool to me. However, it's getting much more difficult, and it's going to be a lot harder for your average person to say, okay, my vehicle's broken. I have a 2018 X vehicle. It just broke down. Now it's a no crank, no start. It's going to be a lot harder for an average person to fix that than it would be for a mechanic to fix that. And that's just the case. It's going to always be the case as things get harder and more complex. But the cool thing is, as things are getting harder and complex, on the same side and on the flip side, the information available and the parts available, the tools available to actually do these jobs are becoming more and more plentiful as competition arises. So tools, you have to have a lot more, and it sucks, and they're a lot more expensive, and you got to have way more tools than you ever used to work on these vehicles. You got to have scanners, you got to have AC machines, you got to have electrical testing, you have to have all your normal mechanical tools like sockets, hammers, ratchets, you name it. But you got to have all that plus everything extra that comes with working on these newer vehicles. A lot of newer vehicles are also moving to torques, inverted torques, you name it. It's all found on a vehicle, and you've got to have the tools for it, because if you can't get it off, you can't work on it. And if you can't put it back on, you shouldn't work on it. So the tools, you got to have a lot more of them. But on the flip side of that, there's a lot more competition in the market. There's a lot more people that make tools, and it's bringing the prices of the tools that you need down. You have a lot of options for different brands of tools. It's not like it was in the 1980s and 1990s where you had to be brand loyal because the red brand was the only brand that made quality tools. It used to be that way. I mean, there's a reason that pretty much every older gentleman, every older woman that's inside of a shop, inside of an assembly plant, their box is red, all their tools are red. There's a reason for it, and it's not because they're the most expensive and they just wanted to be gaudy. It's because those are the tools that held up with the lifetime warranty at that time. We're in a different time period now, and there's a lot of quality tools that are available, and there's a lot of tools that are also made in the same factory that are being sold cheaper under a different brand name. That's a whole different discussion. But as cars are getting harder, as you need more tooling, as there's less room to do everything, you also have the internet with YouTubers coming out with new tutorials. You have new forums of people giving new information. You have new information just coming out based on cars that manufacturers give out. You have procedures that can help you get through vehicles. You have different like online services where you can actually pay somebody to just walk you through it on the phone. You have so many different avenues to get tools. You have so many different avenues to get information that it is still possible. I don't think you're going to see the death of DIY. I don't think you're going to see people just stop working on their own stuff, stop doing stuff themselves. It's going to get a lot harder, and it is already a lot harder for people. It's a lot more expensive. It's a lot. It's just a lot, but I don't think it's going to disappear. I don't think it can, just based on the statistics. I mean, as of right now, we're driving cars longer than we ever have before, which I kind of went over before. But the other part I didn't talk about is the amount that we're spending on average to maintain vehicles. From 20 years ago in 2006, it was just over $8,000, is up to $12,300 something per year for the average vehicle that drives 15,000 miles in the United States. That's insane. So cars are being driven longer than they ever have before, and it's costing $4,000 more per year over a 20-year period just to keep them on the road. So obviously somebody's repairing them. Obviously somebody's learning and taking the time to do this.